I suspected my husband was planning a divorce, so I moved my inheritance. 2 weeks later, he filed, then begged to come back when he realized he was broke. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. The conference room air conditioner was humming, a low, electric buzz that seemed to be the only sound in the entire world. Across the mahogany table sat Robert, my husband of 25 years. He was leaning back in his chair, that arrogant, charming grin plastered on his face, the same grin that had convinced me to marry him when I was 22 and foolish. Next to him was his lawyer, a man who looked like a shark in a cheap suit, tapping a pen rhythmically against a thick binder of documents. They looked confident. No, they looked victorious. They looked like two men who were about to carve up a Thanksgiving turkey, and I was the bird. Diane, Robert's lawyer started, his voice dripping with condescension. We just want to make this as painless as possible. Robert is entitled to 50% of all marital assets. That includes the savings, the house, and, of course, the inheritance funds you received 2 years ago. Since you commingled those funds into the renovation project, they are marital property. Robert didn't say a word. He just winked at me. A wink. After 25 years, after everything I had done for him, he winked at me while trying to strip me bare. He thought he had won. He thought I was just the quiet, supportive wife who would sign on the dotted line to avoid a scene. I looked at my lawyer, Patricia. She adjusted her glasses, her face a mask of absolute calm. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a single, thin file folder. She didn't slide it across the table. She just opened it, looked at Robert, and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who just realized the trap had sprung. Actually, Patricia said, her voice soft but cutting through the room like a knife. There seems to be a misunderstanding about what constitutes marital assets as of today. I watched Robert's face. In a matter of seconds, I saw his expression transform from smug satisfaction to confusion, and then, as the realization hit him, to a pale, sheer terror. It was a look I will cherish for the rest of my life. Thank you so much for tuning in. Before I tell you exactly what was in that folder and how Robert's world crumbled in that conference room, please take a moment to like this video. And in the comments, let me know which city or state you're watching from. I love seeing how far our community reaches. It really helps me feel connected to you. Now, to understand why Robert looked like he'd seen a ghost, we have to go back. We have to go back to when I thought my life was perfect. I'm Diane. I'm 52 years old, and for a quarter of a century, I defined myself by one word: wife. When I met Robert, I was an art history major with a scholarship to a master's program in Italy. He was a junior sales associate selling photocopiers, drowning in student debt and driving a car held together by duct tape and prayers. But he had a dream. He wanted to start his own logistics company. He had the vision, but he didn't have the stability. So, I became his stability. I gave up Italy. I gave up the master's degree. I took a job as an administrative assistant at a dental office because it offered steady pay and good insurance. I paid his rent. I paid off his car. I cooked his meals, ironed his shirts, and stayed up until 3 a.m. proofreading his business proposals. When his company finally took off 10 years ago, I thought, we made it. Not he made it. We made it. And for a long time, it felt that way. We were a team. We didn't have children, something we tried for, but it just never happened, so our bond was everything. We were best friends. Or so I thought. The shift didn't happen overnight. It was subtle, like the slow creep of mold in a damp basement. About 6 months ago, Robert started changing. It began with the phone. For years, Robert was the type of man who would leave his phone on the kitchen counter, unlocked, for hours. He'd ask me to answer texts from his mom or check his emails if he was driving. Then, one Tuesday evening, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Out of habit, I glanced over. He lunged for it. I mean, he physically dove across the cushion to grab it before I could even see the screen. Whoa, I laughed, trying to keep it light, though my stomach did a little flip. CIA secrets? Or just a client? He didn't laugh. He shoved the phone into his pocket and stood up, his face flushed. It's just work, Diane. God, stop being so nosy. I'm handling a crisis with the shipping manifests. He walked into the kitchen, but he didn't turn on the light. I watched him from the living room. He was texting furiously, his shoulders hunched. That was the first crack. The first time I felt a cold draft in our warm home. I didn't know it then, but the storm was already gathering. After the incident on the couch, the atmosphere in our house shifted from comfortable silence to a suffocating tension. It wasn't just the phone, although that was the most obvious red flag. He changed his passcode. It used to be our anniversary, 10/24. Simple. Sweet. But a week later, I tried to open his phone to check the weather while mine was charging, and it locked me out. 6 digits now. When I asked him about it over breakfast, pouring him coffee just the way he liked it, he slammed his hand down on the table. The coffee in his mug sloshed over the rim, staining the white tablecloth. Privacy, Diane. Have you ever heard of it? He snapped, his eyes bulging in a way that scared me. My firm is dealing with sensitive client data now. GDPR compliance. I can't have you scrolling through looking for cookie recipes and accidentally deleting $1 million contract. I was just checking the weather, Robert, I said quietly, wiping up the spill. I didn't mean to upset you. You're always upsetting me lately, he muttered, stabbing at his eggs. You're just hovering. It's suffocating. That word hurt more than the yelling. Suffocating. I was the one who made sure his life ran on rails. I managed the bills, the gardening, the social calendar, his dry cleaning. If I was hovering, it was only to catch the things he dropped. Then came the criticism. It started with little things. Why do you wear that sweater? It makes you look like a librarian. Or, maybe you should dye your hair. The gray is making you look washed out. I've always embraced aging naturally. I take care of myself. I do yoga, I eat well. But suddenly, Robert was looking at me like I was a piece of furniture that had gone out of style. One evening, we were getting ready for a charity gala sponsored by his company. I put on a navy blue silk dress that I loved. It was elegant, fitted but modest. I walked into the bedroom, expecting him to say, "You look beautiful," like he used to. He was fixing his tie in the mirror. He caught my reflection and frowned. Is that what you're wearing? I smoothed the silk over my hips, feeling my confidence wither. I thought it was appropriate. It's black tie optional. It's frumpy, Diane, he sighed, turning around to face me. Look, tonight is important. I need you to look vibrant. Look at the other wives. Just look at the women on TV. They put in effort. You look like you gave up 10 years ago. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them back. I haven't given up, Robert. I'm 52. I'm not going to wear a sequined mini dress. Maybe that's the problem, he sneered. You have no ambition. You're just happy to coast. Coast? I had sacrificed my ambition so he could have his. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to remind him of the nights I ate ramen so he could buy a decent suit for meetings. But I didn't. I was trained to be the peacemaker. I went to the closet, found a dress he had bought me years ago, one I felt was too tight and too low-cut, and I put it on. When we got to the gala, he barely spoke to me. He spent the whole night circulating the room, laughing loudly, his hand resting on the backs of younger women, charming clients. I stood by the bar, holding a club soda, feeling invisible. I was a prop. A necessary accessory that he was ashamed of. But the worst part wasn't the insults. It was the gaslighting. If I brought up his late nights at the office, he'd tell me I was crazy. I'm working my fingers to the bone for us, Diane. For our retirement. And you're here inventing scenarios because you're bored. I'm not bored, I'd argue. I just miss you. You don't miss me, he'd say, laughing cruelly. You miss the attention. You're insecure because you know you're not as sharp as you used to be. Have you seen a doctor? Maybe it's hormonal. You're acting hysterical. Hysterical. That word. It made me question my own reality. Was I being paranoid? Was I becoming one of those nagging wives? I lay in bed that night, staring at his back as he snored, wondering where my husband had gone and who this cruel stranger was. I didn't know then that he wasn't just being cruel. He was preparing the battlefield. He was breaking me down so I wouldn't have the strength to fight when he finally made his move. 2 weeks after the gala, the dynamic shifted again. The cruelty didn't vanish, but it was masked by a sudden, frantic intensity. Robert came home one Friday evening with a bottle of expensive champagne and a glossy brochure. I have a surprise, he announced, popping the cork. The foam spilled over onto the counter, but he didn't care. He was manic, his eyes bright with something that looked like excitement but felt like desperation. He spread the brochure out on the kitchen island. It was for a luxury development called Ocean's Edge. A massive, sprawling villa overlooking the Pacific. Floor-to-ceiling glass, an infinity pool, a private deck. It was beautiful. It was also $5 million. Robert, I said, putting down my glass. This is stunning. But we can't afford this. The mortgage would be astronomical. That's just it, he exclaimed, grabbing my hands. His palms were sweaty. We can afford it. This is our future, Diane. Imagine waking up to those waves every day. This is the retirement we deserve. I want to make it up to you. I know I've been stressed lately, I know I've been difficult. But this is why. I've been trying to secure this for us. For a second, my heart leaped. Was this it? Was the stress just about money and providing for us? Was he trying to apologize? But the down payment alone. I started. We have the money, he cut in, squeezing my hands tighter. Your inheritance. The air left the room. My parents had passed away 2 years ago, within months of each other. It was the darkest time of my life, and they had left me everything. Their home, their savings, their life insurance. It was a substantial amount, enough to ensure I would never have to worry about money again. I had kept it in a separate account, mostly because I was too emotional to touch it. It felt like Mom and Dad's money, not mine. Robert had never pressured me about it before. He had always said, "That's your safety net, honey." "Robert, that money it's in my name." "It's separate property," I stammered. I know, he said, his voice dropping to a soothing, almost hypnotic tone. "But to get the loan approval for a property this size, we need to show liquid assets in a joint account. We need to combine our strength. If you transfer the funds to our joint savings, the bank will see we have the reserves. We'll get the best interest rate. We lock in the deal, and then we have the house." He pulled me into a hug, but his body felt rigid. "Diane, look at me. Don't you trust me? After 25 years? I built a company from nothing. I know finance. This is a smart investment. Unless you don't see a future with me? It was a trap. A verbal trap. If I said no, I was the bad wife who didn't trust her husband, the one destroying our dream retirement. If I said yes, well, my gut was screaming no. It's a huge step, I whispered against his chest. It is, he agreed, pulling back to look me in the eye. But we need to move fast. There's another buyer interested. A cash buyer. We need to show proof of funds by next Friday. Can you go to the bank on Monday? Monday? That was 2 days away. That's so fast. Money loves speed, Diane, he quoted one of those business books he was always reading. Come on. Do this for us. Let's start fresh. Just you, me, and the ocean. I looked at the brochure. It was beautiful. It represented everything I wanted: peace, reconnection, a restart. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was being paranoid and stingy. Maybe holding on to that money separately was keeping a wedge between us. Okay, I said slowly. I'll look into the transfer requirements on Monday. That's my girl. He kissed me hard, almost bruising my lip, and poured more champagne. To us. To the future. He spent the rest of the weekend being the perfect husband. He mowed the lawn. He grilled steaks. He rubbed my feet while we watched TV. But every time I looked at him, I saw that manic gleam in his eye. And I noticed something else. He was constantly checking his watch. Not his phone, he was careful with that now, but his watch. Like he was counting down the minutes to something. And he kept mentioning the joint account. Over and over. Once it's in the joint account, we're set. The joint account is the key. It gnawed at me. Why did it have to be joint? Why couldn't I just be a guarantor? I wasn't a finance expert, but I wasn't stupid. I decided I needed to do one thing before Monday. I needed to see where he was really going when he said he was meeting the realtor. On Monday morning, Robert left the house early. Big meeting with the developers, he said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. He looked handsome, dashing even, but there was a sheen of sweat on his forehead. You're going to the bank today, right? Around 11? Yes, I lied. I have an appointment with the branch manager. Good. Text me as soon as it's done. I love you. He kissed my cheek, grabbed his briefcase, and walked out. He didn't look back. I waited 5 minutes, then I grabbed my keys. I wasn't going to the bank. I was going to follow him. I felt ridiculous, like a character in a bad Lifetime movie. I drove a nondescript gray sedan, perfect for blending in. I trailed his BMW from a safe distance. He didn't go to the developer's office downtown. He didn't go to the site of the new villa. He drove to the outskirts of town, to a trendy coffee shop near the University District. It was a place for students and hipsters, not middle-aged businessmen. He parked and went inside. I parked across the street and pulled a baseball cap low over my eyes. I walked in a few minutes later. The place was crowded and noisy, the smell of roasted beans and burnt sugar thick in the air. I scanned the room. There he was, sitting in a booth in the back corner. But he wasn't with a developer. He was alone, talking on his phone, gesturing wildly. I ordered a black coffee to look legitimate and maneuvered my way toward a high-backed booth directly behind him. My heart was hammering so hard against my ribs I thought it might crack a bone. I sat down, facing away from him, and leaned back, straining to hear over the hiss of the espresso machine. I know, baby, I know, Robert's voice was low, but clear. I'm handling it. She's going to the bank today. My blood ran cold. Baby? Stop worrying, he sounded irritated now. I told you, the paperwork is ready. Once the money hits the joint account, it's marital property. 50-50 by law, but I can probably bully her into more if I threaten to drag out the divorce. I clamped a hand over my mouth to stop the gasp. Tears instantly flooded my eyes, blurring the coffee shop into a smear of brown and orange. No, I'm not buying the stupid house, Robert laughed, a cruel, ugly sound. That brochure was just a prop. I printed it off the internet. God, you should have seen her face. She ate it up. She's desperate for me to love her again. It's pathetic, really. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Physically sick. The room started to spin. A prop. It was all a prop. Listen to me, he continued, his voice dropping to a sinister whisper. As soon as that transfer clears, I'm filing the papers. Tomorrow morning. I'll cite irreconcilable differences. I'll take the cash, pay off the guys in Vegas, and then it's just you and me. And the kid. The kid? Yeah, I promise. I'll kick the old hag to the curb. She can keep the cat. We'll get that condo in Miami you wanted. I need this money, Kayla. These loan sharks aren't playing around anymore. If I don't pay them by Wednesday, I'm dead meat. So let me finish playing the good husband for one more day. There was a pause, presumably while the person on the other end, Kayla, spoke. I love you too. Yeah. Sexy. Okay, I gotta go. She's texting me. My phone buzzed in my purse. I looked down. A text from Robert, thinking of you, honey. Hope the bank meeting goes well. Love. The emoji heart felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I sat there, frozen, for what felt like an hour, though it was probably only minutes. He stood up. I slumped down in the booth, hiding my face behind a menu. I heard his footsteps pass me. I smelled his cologne, the expensive sandalwood scent I had bought him for Christmas. He walked out the door, whistling. He was planning to destroy my life, steal my parents' legacy, and leave me for a pregnant mistress, and he was whistling about it. I didn't move until I was sure he was gone. I walked out to my car, my legs feeling like lead. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The sadness was evaporating, burned away by a heat rising from the pit of my stomach. It wasn't just anger. It was rage. Pure, molten rage. Old hag? I whispered to the empty car. Pathetic? I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I saw the gray hair he hated. I saw the lines around my eyes. But I also saw the eyes of the woman who had kept him afloat for 25 years. The woman who had managed the books, saved the money, and built the life he was trying to steal. He wanted to play games? He wanted to talk about finance and law? Okay. I started the car. I wasn't going to the bank to transfer money to him. I was going to war. I didn't go home. I couldn't bear to walk into that house, to see the wedding photos on the mantel, the spot on the rug where we used to play Scrabble, the kitchen where he had spread out that fake brochure. Everything in that house was a lie now. It was a stage set for a play I hadn't known I was acting in. I drove west. I drove until the suburbs turned into coastal highway, until the smell of exhaust was replaced by the smell of salt and brine. I pulled into a deserted overlook facing the Pacific Ocean, the real ocean, not the fantasy view Robert had tried to sell me. I turned off the engine and let the sound of the crashing waves fill the silence. And then, I screamed. I screamed until my throat felt raw. I screamed for the 22-year-old girl who gave up Italy. I screamed for the nights I spent alone while he was working late. I screamed for the baby we never had, and the baby she was having with him. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe, gasping for air like a drowning woman. How could I have been so blind? Guys in Vegas. Gambling. That explained the business trips, the stress, the mysterious tension. He wasn't just leaving me, he was using me to bail out his addiction. He was going to wash my parents' life savings down a drain of poker chips and sports betting and leave me destitute in my 50s. I looked at the water. It was chaotic, violent, and powerful. It didn't care about my broken heart. And strangely, that comforted me. The world kept turning. I was still here. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Robert. Are you done at the bank yet? Let me know so I can call the realtor. I looked at the screen. The urge to text back, to scream at him, to tell him I knew everything, was overwhelming. But then I remembered what he said to Kayla. I can probably bully her into more if I threaten to drag out the divorce. If I confronted him now, he would panic. He would get vicious. He might hide assets, or worse, he might get physically dangerous. He was desperate. Desperate men do terrible things. I needed to be smarter than him. I needed to be the pathetic, submissive wife for just a little longer. I wiped my face with a tissue. I checked my eyes in the mirror, red and puffy. I put on my sunglasses. Okay, Diane, I said aloud. My voice sounded different. Deeper. Steadier. You want to play the good husband? I'll play the good wife. But you're not writing the ending of this story. I am. I picked up my phone and typed a reply. My fingers didn't shake. Bank is crowded. Manager is stuck in a meeting. Might take a few hours. Don't worry, I'm getting it done. I hit send. Then I dialed the one person I knew would pick up on the first ring. Patricia? I said when she answered. Diane? You sound terrible. What's wrong? Patricia had been my roommate in college. She was the one who told me not to give up Italy for Robert. She was now the toughest divorce attorney in the state. She had divorced 3 husbands and kept her fortune every single time. You were right, I said, my voice cold and flat. About everything. Robert is planning to leave me. He has a mistress. He has gambling debts. And he's trying to trick me into transferring my inheritance into a joint account before he files. Silence on the other end. Then, the sound of a chair scraping back. Where are you? I'm at the coast. Do not go home, Patricia commanded. Do not speak to him. Do not sign anything. Come to my office. Now. Take the back entrance. I have to go home eventually, Pat. He thinks I'm at the bank. We'll figure out the narrative, Patricia said. But right now, we need to protect the assets. If he wants a divorce, we'll give him one. But he's not walking away with a golden parachute. He's walking away naked. I hung up and started the car. As I pulled back onto the highway, a strange sensation washed over me. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my chest, but alongside it was something else. Adrenaline. Clarity. For 25 years, I had been the passenger in Robert's car. Today, I was taking the wheel. And I was going to run him off the road. Patricia's office was a fortress of glass and steel downtown. I walked in wearing my baseball cap and sunglasses, looking like a celebrity trying to avoid paparazzi, or a woman having a breakdown. Probably the latter. Patricia didn't hug me. She knew I would shatter if she offered sympathy. Instead, she pointed to a leather chair and handed me a bottle of water. Spill, she said. Every detail. Don't leave anything out. I told her everything. The password change. The insults. The beach house brochure. The coffee shop conversation. The guys in Vegas. The baby. When I finished, Patricia sat back, tapping a gold pen against her lip. Okay. This is classic. He's leveraged himself to the hilt, probably owes dangerous people money, and sees your inheritance as his get-out-of-jail-free card. He needs that money to be marital property so he can claim half, or use it to pay debts that will become marital debts once he files. He said he's filing tomorrow, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Then we have to move faster, Patricia said. She pressed a button on her intercom. Send Beverly in. The door opened, and my mother walked in. I gasped. Mom? How did you? I called her, Patricia said. As soon as you hung up. My mother, Beverly, was 75 years old, 5 feet tall, and made of titanium. She had never liked Robert. She called him the Slick Willie. She walked over and wrapped her arms around me. I finally let out a sob, burying my face in her shoulder. I knew it, Mom whispered, stroking my hair. I knew that Weasel would show his true colors. Shoo, it's okay. We prepared for this. We did? I pulled back, looking at them. Diane, Mom said sternly. Why do you think your father and I put those clauses in the will? We didn't leave the money directly to you in a lump sum cash transfer. We left it in a revocable trust that you control. Right, I said. But Robert wants me to liquidate the trust and move the cash. Exactly, Patricia interjected. If you move the cash to a joint account, the trust protection is gone. It becomes coming-led. But, right now, the money is still separate. It's yours. So I just don't transfer it? I asked. No, Patricia smiled, and it was a terrifying expression. If you just say no, he gets suspicious. He might get violent, or he might file immediately and try to freeze your assets pending litigation. We need to make sure that money is untouchable, forever, before he files. How? We move it, Patricia said. Not to him. To an irrevocable trust. We create a new entity today. We transfer all your inheritance, your stocks, and your personal savings into it. We name your mother as the trustee. You are the beneficiary, but you don't own it technically. Once it's in there, it's locked. Even a judge has a hard time piercing an irrevocable trust if it's done correctly. And the best part, Mom added, her eyes twinkling with mischief, is that we can do the paperwork right now. I brought the notary. But Robert thinks I'm at the bank transferring it to us, I said. Let him think that, Patricia said. Go home. Tell him there was a snag. A bureaucratic delay. Tell him the funds will clear in 48 hours. Buy us 2 days. That gives me time to file the trust documents with the state and secure the assets. By the time he files for divorce, you will be, on paper, a woman of very modest means. And the house? I asked. The house is marital property, Patricia shrugged. He can fight for half of that. But the inheritance? The millions? That will be safe in Fort Knox. I looked at the documents Patricia was sliding across the desk. It was a declaration of war. If I signed this, I was effectively nuking my marriage. But my marriage was already ashes. Robert had burned it down the moment he bet our future on a poker game. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake this time. Where do I sign? I asked. Patricia grinned. Right there. Welcome to the resistance, Diane. Driving home from Patricia's office was the longest commute of my life. I had to transition from scorned woman plotting revenge back to dutiful, slightly confused wife. I practiced my facial expressions in the rearview mirror. Concerned. Apologetic. Loving. It made me sick. When I pulled into the driveway, Robert's car was already there. He was standing on the porch, pacing. He looked like a coiled spring. I took a deep breath, plastered a nervous smile on my face, and stepped out of the car. "Well," he practically shouted, running down the steps. "Did you do it? Is it done?" I bit my lip, feigning hesitation. "Robert, honey, don't be mad." His face dropped. The color drained out of it, leaving him looking gray and clammy. "What? What happened? Did you change your mind?" His voice rose an octave, edging on hysteria. "No. No, of course not," I reassured him, reaching for his hand. His palm was soaking wet. I went to the bank. I signed all the request forms. But the manager, Mr. Henderson? He said because of the amount, it's over $2 million, Robert, it triggers a federal review. Patriot Act stuff or something? He said it takes 48 hours to clear compliance before the funds can hit our joint account. I held my breath. This was the lie Patricia and I had concocted. It sounded official enough to be true, but vague enough to be confusing. Robert stared at me, his eyes darting back and forth as if searching for a lie. Compliance? That's bullshit. It's a domestic transfer. I know, I said, widening my eyes. I argued with him. I told him we needed it for the house. But he said his hands were tied. He said, surely my husband understands banking regulations? I threw his own arrogance back at him. I knew he couldn't admit he didn't know the regulations without looking weak. He ran a hand through his hair, cursing under his breath. Damn it. Damn it. 2 days? You're sure? He said Thursday morning at the latest, I promised. Is that okay? Will we lose the house? Robert looked at me. I could see the gears turning. He was calculating. Could he hold off the loan sharks for 2 more days? Could he stall Kayla? I can make some calls, he said, his voice tight. I can probably buy us some time. But Thursday, Diane. It has to be Thursday. No more excuses. I promise, I said. I want this beach house as much as you do. He let out a long breath and pulled me into a hug. I squeezed my eyes shut. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath and beneath the cologne, the faint, acrid scent of fear. He was terrified. Good. You're a good wife, Diane, he whispered. I don't say that enough. I almost gagged. I love you, Robert, I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. That night was torture. We ate dinner, takeout, because he was too stressed to let me cook and I was too nauseous to eat. He kept checking his phone under the table. I saw the glow of the screen reflecting off his glasses. Probably Kayla asking if he'd filed the papers yet. Probably the Vegas guys threatening to break his legs. We went to bed early. He wanted to be intimate. He started kissing my neck, his hands moving over me with that possessive entitlement he always had. Panic flared in my chest. I couldn't let him touch me. Not after knowing where those hands had been. Not after hearing him call me an old hag. Robert, I can't, I pulled away, feigning a cramp. My stomach. I think that Thai food was bad. I feel awful. He pulled back immediately, looking annoyed rather than concerned. Great. Fine. Go to sleep. He rolled over, turning his back to me. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above us. Slice, slice, slice. It sounded like a guillotine. My phone, hidden under my pillow on silent, vibrated once. A text from Patricia, trust documents filed. Transfers initiated. By tomorrow morning, you are officially poor. Sleep tight. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The money was moving. Like a ghost ship in the night, my inheritance was sailing away from Robert's grasping hands and docking safely in my mother's harbor. I looked at Robert's sleeping form. He was snoring softly now. He thought he had manipulated me. He thought he had won. He had no idea that the woman lying next to him was no longer his wife. She was his executioner. The next morning, Wednesday, was the day of the heist. Well, a legal heist. While the electronic transfers were happening in the background, there was one physical loose end, the safe deposit box. We had a joint safe deposit box at the bank downtown. Inside, it held my grandmother's diamond jewelry, some gold coins my father had collected, and the deed to the rental property I had inherited, which was technically in my name, but the physical paper was there. If Robert filed for divorce and got a court order to freeze assets, he could lock me out of that box. Or worse, he could go there today and empty it. I waited until he left for work. He kissed me goodbye, tense but hopeful. "Tomorrow's the big day," he said. "Thursday. Don't forget." "I won't," I smiled. As soon as his car turned the corner, I moved. I grabbed my purse and the spare key to the box. I drove to the bank, my eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror, paranoid that he was following me again. I got to the bank at 10 a.m. It was quiet. "I need to access box 402, I told the teller, trying to keep my voice steady. "Certainly, Mrs. Miller." "Right this way." We went into the vault. The heavy steel door clanked shut behind us, echoing like a prison cell. I unlocked the box. There it was. The velvet pouches holding the diamonds. The heavy stack of gold coins. I shoved them into my large tote bag. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. This was my property, but it felt like I was stealing. My phone rang. The sound echoed in the vault, making me jump and nearly drop a gold coin. It was Robert. Why was he calling? Did he get a notification? Did the bank alert him that I was accessing the box? I stared at the screen, paralyzed. If I didn't answer, he'd suspect something. If I answered, would he hear the echo of the vault? I took a deep breath, grabbed a handful of tissues from my purse, and held them over the microphone to muffle the background noise. I answered. "Hello? Diane? Where are you?" His voice was sharp. Suspicious. I'm at the grocery store," I lied, thinking quickly. "In the frozen food aisle. It's freezing in here." "Why?" "I just got an alert that there was an inquiry on our credit card." "Did you buy something?" "Oh, God. I had stopped for gas on the way here. I used the joint card by mistake because I was so nervous." "Oh." "Yes," I said, forcing a laugh. "I put gas in the car." "Sorry. I didn't think it would trigger an alert." "Gas? Why are you getting gas? You said you were going to the grocery store." "The store is 5 miles away, Robert." The tank was empty. Okay, he snapped. "Just be careful with the spending. We need every penny for the house closing. Don't buy expensive groceries." "I'm buying pasta and sauce, Robert." "Cheap dinner," I said, my anger flaring up just enough to sound genuine. "Fine. I'll see you tonight." Click. I slumped against the metal table in the viewing room. My knees were shaking. He was watching the credit card alerts like a hawk. He was obsessing over every penny because he was completely broke. I finished emptying the box. I left it completely bare. Dust bunnies were the only thing Robert would find in there. I walked out of the bank, the heavy bag over my shoulder. I walked straight to my car and locked the doors. I drove to my mother's house and unloaded the treasure into her personal safe. "It's done," I told her, pouring myself a glass of iced tea in her kitchen. "The box is empty." Patricia texted that the wire transfers for the trust are confirmed. The accounts are drained. Mom looked at me with pride. Good. Now, what about the joint checking? I left $2,000 in there, I said. And the credit card bill is due next week. It's about $15,000. Generous of you, Mom smirked. So, I said, looking at the clock. It was noon on Wednesday. Now we wait for the explosion. What happens tomorrow? Mom asked. Tomorrow, I said, staring at the ice melting in my glass. Tomorrow I tell him the transfer didn't go through. And tomorrow, he realizes he's out of time with his loan sharks. He's going to panic. And he's going to file those divorce papers to try and save his skin. You're ready? I'm ready, I said. But deep down, a small part of me was terrified. I was poking a bear. A desperate, indebted, cornered bear. And I was about to lock myself in a cage with him for one last night. Wednesday afternoon dragged on like a slow death. I sat in my mother's sunroom, surrounded by her orchids, staring at my laptop screen. The accounts were empty. The safe deposit box was cleared out. The trap was set. But there was one piece of the puzzle I still needed to see with my own eyes. Kayla. I needed to know who she was. Robert had been careful not to leave a digital trail on his main accounts, but arrogance makes people sloppy. And 28-year-olds live their lives online. I created a fake Instagram account, no profile picture, generic name like Garden Lover 55, and started digging. It didn't take long. I searched the geolocation tag for the coffee shop where I had seen them. I scrolled through hundreds of photos of lattes and avocado toast until I saw it. A selfie posted 3 days ago. It was her. The girl from the coffee shop. Blonde highlights, overly plumped lips, posing with a duck face. The caption read, "Coffee dates with my silver fox. Big things coming soon. Hashtag future Mrs. Hashtag upgrade." I clicked on her profile. It was public. Of course it was. I spent the next 2 hours scrolling through the life of the woman who was helping destroy my marriage. Her name was Kayla Ricci. She was an executive assistant at a rival logistics firm, not even Robert's employee, which meant they met at industry mixers. The photos were a nausea-inducing timeline of my husband's betrayal. There was a photo of a Cartier bracelet on her wrist, posted the same week Robert told me business was tight and we needed to cut back on groceries. There was a photo of a romantic dinner at a steakhouse downtown, posted on a night Robert claimed he was working late on a proposal. And then, the most recent one, posted just this morning to her close friend's story, which she had foolishly set to public for a few hours before likely realizing her mistake, or maybe she just didn't care. It was an ultrasound photo. The caption, "Baby Daddy is finally leaving the Wicked Witch of the West this week. Can't wait to start our family in our new beach house. Hashtag 12 weeks hashtag blessed. Wicked Witch of the West." That was me. I stared at the screen, my hand trembling on the mouse. I wasn't the Wicked Witch. I was the woman who had ironed his shirts for 25 years. I was the woman who nursed him through the flu, who held his hand when his father died, who gave up her dreams so he could chase his. And this child. He was giving her a child. We had tried for years. We went to specialists. We spent thousands on IVF. It never happened. Robert had eventually said, "It's okay, Diane. We have each other. That's enough." But apparently, it wasn't enough. It was never enough. A wave of grief hit me so hard I had to put my head between my knees to keep from passing out. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the lying. It was the erasure. He was replacing me. He was literally building the life we were supposed to have, the beach house, the child, the wealth, with someone who called me a witch on the internet. But as I stared at Kayla's smug, filtered face, the grief began to harden into something cold and sharp. like steel. She thought she was winning the lottery. She thought she was snagging a rich, older businessman who would pamper her for the rest of her life. She had no idea she was catching a falling knife. She didn't know about the gambling debts. She didn't know the beach house money was actually my parents' money, and that as of 2 hours ago, that money was locked in a vault she would never have the key to. I took screenshots. I screenshotted everything. The ultrasound, the bracelet, the captions, the dates. I printed them out in color. I wasn't just going to divorce Robert. I was going to destroy his reputation. In a divorce proceeding, proof of adultery often doesn't change the financial split much in no-fault states, but it changes the narrative. It gives me leverage. And more importantly, it was ammunition for when his family inevitably tried to paint me as the villain. "You poor, stupid girl," I whispered to the screen. I closed the laptop. My mother walked in with a plate of sandwiches. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "No," I replied, standing up and smoothing down my skirt. "I just saw the future. And it's going to be very entertaining to watch it crash and burn." I checked my phone. A text from Robert, "Can't wait for tomorrow. Love you." I didn't reply. I just got in my car and drove back to the house. It was Wednesday night. The last night I would ever have to sleep under the same roof as that monster. I was going to make sure it was a night he would never forget. The air in the house that Wednesday evening was thick enough to choke on. Robert came home early, whistling that same tune, carrying a bouquet of cheap supermarket flowers. He was manic again, too much energy, too much smiling. It was the behavior of a man walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. "Tomorrow's the day," he announced, putting the flowers in a vase without cutting the stems. I called the realtor. "We close on the beach house on Friday." I told him the wire hits our account tomorrow morning. I stood at the kitchen island, chopping vegetables. I kept the knife in my hand. It gave me a sense of security. "Robert," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "We need to talk." He stopped mid-stride. The smile didn't leave his face, but it didn't reach his eyes anymore. "Talk? Talk about what? Can't we talk after the transfer clears? I want to celebrate tonight." "It's about the transfer," I said. He froze. "What about it?" "I got a call from Mr. Henderson at the bank about an hour ago," I lied. I turned to face him, leaning my hip against the counter. "There's a problem." "What problem?" His voice dropped. It wasn't loud yet, but it was dangerous. "The Patriot Act compliance check," I said, weaving the web tighter. "Because the trust was established by my parents years ago, and because the amount is significant, they flagged it for a secondary review. They're saying it could take another 10 days to clear." 10 days? He didn't scream it. He whispered it. But it was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. I tried to argue with them, I continued, making my voice tremble just the right amount. I told them we needed it for the house. But they said their hands are tied. "I'm so sorry, Robert. We might lose the villa." I watched him. I watched the blood drain from his face, leaving him a sickly, waxen yellow. I watched his hands curl into fists at his sides. He wasn't mourning the loss of a vacation home. He was calculating the broken kneecaps the loan sharks had promised him if he didn't pay up by Friday. "You're lying," he spat. "Why would I lie?" I asked, feigning hurt. "I want this as much as you do." 10 days is too late," he roared, suddenly grabbing the vase of flowers and hurling it across the room. It smashed against the wall, shattering into 1,000 pieces. Water and glass exploded everywhere. I flinched, but I didn't step back. "Robert! You're scaring me." "I don't care if I'm scaring you." He marched toward me, his face twisted into a mask of pure rage. Spittle flew from his mouth. You stupid, incompetent woman. You couldn't just get it done? You had to mess it up? Do you know what you've done? I didn't do anything. It's the bank. It's always someone else. It's never you. He slammed his fist onto the granite countertop, inches from my hand. Fix it. Call them back right now. Tell them to release the funds or I will go down there and burn the place down. It's 7 p.m., Robert. The bank is closed. He stared at me, his chest heaving. For a second, I thought he was going to hit me. I saw the impulse flicker in his eyes. But then he turned away, running his hands through his hair, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. I'm dead, he muttered to himself. I'm actually dead. He pulled out his phone. His fingers were shaking so badly he dropped it. He scrambled to pick it up, cursing. Where are you going? I asked as he grabbed his keys. Out, he snarled. Since you can't be useful, I have to go find a solution. Don't wait up. He stormed out the front door, slamming it so hard the windows rattled. I heard his car tires screech as he peeled out of the driveway. I stood there in the silence of the kitchen, surrounded by broken glass and dying flowers. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my mind was crystal clear. He was gone. He was going to Kayla's. He was going to beg for money, or cry on her shoulder, or figure out his next move. I moved fast. I didn't clean up the glass. I left it there. Let it be a monument to his temper. I went upstairs and packed a bag. Just the essentials. My jewelry was already gone. My papers were with Patricia. I took my clothes, my laptop, and the cat carrier for Whiskers. Then, I did the most important thing. I called the locksmith I had put on standby earlier that day. He's gone, I told the locksmith. Come now. 40 minutes later, the locks on the front and back doors were changed. I stuck a note on the front door. Robert. I am staying at a hotel tonight because I do not feel safe after your outburst. Do not try to enter the house. Diane *. I wasn't actually staying at a hotel. I was going to my mom's. But he didn't need to know that. As I drove away, seeing the house dark and locked up tight, I felt a strange sense of loss. That house had been my world. But looking at it now, all I saw was a cage I had finally broken out of. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up in my mother's guest room, drinking tea and stroking Whiskers, waiting for the inevitable. It came at 9 a.m. on Thursday morning. My phone blew up with notifications. Emails from our joint account. Alerts from the credit monitoring service. But the most important one was a text from Patricia. He filed. It's on the docket. Case #24-9088. Miller versus Miller. I let out a low whistle. He hadn't waited. Here was Robert's logic. He believed the money was stuck in the transfer process. He thought that by filing for divorce now, he could freeze all assets exactly where they were. He assumed the millions were in a pending limbo between my trust and our joint account, and he wanted a judge to seize them before they could bounce back to me. He was trying to trap the money in midair. He had no idea the money had never even left the ground. An hour later, there was a knock at my mother's door. It was a process server. A young kid who looked bored. Diane Miller? Yes. You've been served. He handed me a thick envelope. I opened it right there on the porch. Petition for dissolution of marriage. I skimmed the pages. It was brutal. He was asking for primary possession of the marital residence, my house, 50% of all financial assets, explicitly listing inheritance funds currently in transfer. Spousal support, alimony, citing his contribution to the management of family assets. Restraining order preventing me from dissipating assets. Contribution to management? I laughed out loud. The only thing he managed was losing money. I called Patricia. I got the papers. Good, Patricia said, her voice crisp. He's playing dirty. He's filed an emergency motion for a temporary financial hearing. He wants immediate access to funds. He claims you are withholding marital property to spite him. When is the hearing? Monday morning. Mandatory mediation first, then the judge. Monday? I felt a knot of anxiety. That's 4 days away. What do I do until then? You stay hidden, Patricia said. He's going to come looking for you when he realizes the bank isn't processing anything. He's going to realize you played him. Stay at your mother's. Do not answer his calls. Let him spiral. And spiral he did. By Thursday afternoon, Robert had figured out that the locks were changed. He sent me a string of abusive texts. You locked me out of my house? That's illegal. I'm calling the cops. Where is the money, Diane? The bank says there's no pending transfer. You lied to me. Pick up the phone, you coward. I didn't answer. I screenshotted every single one and forwarded them to Patricia. Add it to the file, I typed. Then came the voicemails. He sounded drunk. Or desperate. Or both. Diane, baby, please. I'm sorry about the vase. I'm just stressed. We can fix this. Just transfer the money. We need it. I need it. They're going to kill me, Diane. Please. For a second, a tiny, foolish part of my heart ached for him. He was in trouble. Serious trouble. But then I looked at the screenshot of the ultrasound photo on my laptop. Baby daddy is finally leaving the Wicked Witch. He had made his bed. He could lie in it. Or die in it. I spent the weekend preparing. My mother, usually a sweet old lady who baked cookies, turned into a general. She helped me organize every receipt, every bank statement, every scrap of paper proving that my inheritance had been kept separate for 2 years until the moment I moved it to her trust. You look tired, Mom said on Sunday night, handing me a face mask. Put this on. You need to look fresh for court. The best revenge is looking like you slept 8 hours while he looks like a train wreck. I put on the mask. I looked at myself in the mirror. The scared woman who had driven to the coast on Monday was gone. In her place was someone else. Someone colder. Someone stronger. Robert had filed the papers thinking he was checkmating a pawn. He didn't realize he was sitting across from the Queen. Monday morning dawned bright and cold. The kind of day that feels crisp, like a new sheet of paper. I woke up at 6 a.m. I didn't feel nervous. I felt ready. I showered and spent extra time on my hair, blowing it out until it shone. I opened the garment bag Patricia had sent over. Inside was a suit she had helped me pick out online. It wasn't the beige, frumpy cardigans Robert liked me in. It was a sharp, tailored white pantsuit. Powerful. Clean. Unapologetic. I put it on. It fit like armor. Then, I reached for my makeup bag. I applied my foundation, my mascara. And finally, the lipstick. A deep, bold crimson. Robert hated red lipstick. He said it made me look cheap. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look cheap. I looked dangerous. Wow, Mom said when I walked into the kitchen. He's not going to recognize you. That's the point, I said, grabbing my coffee. We met Patricia at the courthouse. The mediation was taking place in a conference room in the annex building. It was a required step before we went in front of a judge. As we walked down the hallway, the click-clack of my heels echoing on the marble floor, I saw them. Robert was sitting on a bench outside the conference room. He looked terrible. His suit was wrinkled. He had dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. He was shaking his leg nervously. Next to him sat his lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling. Sterling looked like a caricature of a sleazy divorce attorney, slicked back hair, expensive watch, smile that didn't reach his eyes. But what stopped me in my tracks was who was sitting on the other side of Robert. Kayla. She was actually there. She wasn't allowed in the mediation room, obviously, but she had come for moral support. Or maybe to stake her claim. She was wearing a tight floral dress that showed off the tiny bump of her belly. She was holding Robert's hand, whispering something in his ear. The audacity. The absolute, unmitigated gall to bring his pregnant mistress to the divorce mediation. Patricia stopped and gripped my arm. "Don't react," she whispered. "She wants a reaction. Give her nothing." I took a deep breath. I channeled every ounce of dignity I possessed. I walked straight toward them. Robert looked up. His jaw literally dropped. He stared at the white suit, the red lips, the head held high. For a second, he looked confused, as if he couldn't quite place who I was. "Diane," he croaked. I didn't look at him. I didn't look at Kayla, though I could feel her eyes boring into me, assessing me, probably wondering why the old hag looked like a CEO. I stopped in front of the door. I turned to Patricia and said, loud enough for them to hear, "Shall we go inside? I have a busy afternoon scheduled." We walked in. The door clicked shut behind us, cutting off the view of Robert and his little entourage. "Okay," Patricia said, setting her briefcase on the table. That was perfect. He's already off balance. Now, let's knock him down. We sat down. A few minutes later, Robert and Mr. Sterling entered. Robert wouldn't meet my eyes. He slumped in his chair. Mr. Sterling, however, was all bluster. "Let's make this quick," Sterling said, opening a thick binder. "My client is filing for divorce based on irreconcilable differences. We are petitioning for an equitable division of assets. We know Mrs. Miller attempted to hide funds last week, and we will be asking the court to penalize her for that." Hide funds? I almost laughed. Furthermore, Sterling continued, "My client requires an immediate disbursement of $500,000 from the marital estate to cover pressing liabilities." "Debts," Patricia corrected him. "Gambling debts." "Liabilities," Sterling emphasized. Regardless of the nature, they were incurred during the marriage. They are marital debt. Just as the assets are marital assets. I watched Robert. He was sweating. He wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. He looked like a man waiting for the executioner to pull the lever. "Is that all?" Patricia asked calmly. "We want the house," Sterling added. "And 50% of the inheritance trust." "Okay," Patricia said. She didn't argue. She didn't object. She just reached into her bag and pulled out that single, thin file folder I mentioned at the beginning of this story. The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed. "Mr. Sterling," Patricia began, her voice sweet as poison. "Before we discuss dividing the pie, I think you should know, there is no pie." Mr. Sterling blinked. "Excuse me?" "You are operating under the assumption that Mrs. Miller is in possession of a significant inheritance," Patricia said, opening the folder. "And you are correct that she was in possession of it. However, you seem to have missed a crucial filing with the Secretary of State last Wednesday." Patricia slid a document across the table. It was a notarized, stamped, and seal-embossed copy of the Beverly J. Anderson Irrevocable Trust. "What is this?" Robert asked, reaching for the paper. His hand was shaking so bad the paper rattled. That, I said, speaking for the first time, is the new owner of my assets. Patricia leaned forward. On Wednesday morning, prior to your filing, Diane legally transferred all separate property, including the inheritance, the stocks, and her personal savings, into an irrevocable trust. Diane is the beneficiary, yes, but she does not have ownership or control. The trustee is her mother. The funds are locked. They are not marital property. They never were commingled. And now, they are untouchable. Robert stared at the document. He tried to read the legal jargon, his eyes darting frantically across the page. This is fraud. Sterling sputtered. She moved assets in anticipation of divorce. Actually, Patricia countered, Diane didn't know about the divorce filing until after the trust was funded. And since the inheritance was never marital property to begin with, she had every right to move it. You can try to pierce the trust, Mr. Sterling. It will take about 3 years of litigation and $50,000 in legal fees. Does your client have $50,000? We all looked at Robert. He didn't have $50, let alone $50,000. But... Robert looked up, his face pale as a sheet. But the joint account? The transfer? You said the bank was processing it. I lied, I said. The silence that followed was absolute. I lied, Robert, I repeated, my voice steady and strong. Just like you lied about the business trips. Just like you lied about the gambling. Just like you lied about Kayla. He flinched at the name. I know everything, I told him. I know about the guys in Vegas. I know about the ultrasound. I know you called me an old hag in that coffee shop. Did you really think I was that stupid? Did you think I would just hand over my parents' legacy so you could blow it on poker and play house with your assistant? Robert looked like he was having a stroke. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He turned to his lawyer. Do something, he wheezed. Fix this. Sterling flipped through the trust document, his face grim. He closed the folder. He knew. He knew the law. An irrevocable trust established with separate funds before a filing? It was ironclad. Robert, Sterling said quietly. If this is real, we have a problem. A problem? Patricia laughed. You have a catastrophe. Because here is the current state of the marital assets. She slid a second paper across. A bank statement. Joint checking, $2,000, Patricia read. Joint debts, $15,000 in credit cards. And, Mr. Sterling, here is a list of your client's personal gambling debts, which we have evidence of. $140,000. Robert put his head in his hands. So, Patricia concluded. We are happy to split the marital assets. You get $1,000 from the checking account. And you get half the credit card debt. Diane will keep her trust. She will keep the house, as she paid the mortgage with separate funds for the last 2 years, which we can prove. If you want to fight this, we will countersue for adultery and dissipation of assets, and we will depose Ms. Ricci about her knowledge of the scheme to defraud Diane. No, Robert whispered. No, don't drag Kayla into this. Then sign, I said. I pushed the settlement agreement toward him. Sign the house over to me. Walk away. You keep your debt. I keep my life. That's the deal. Robert looked at the paper. Then he looked at me. His eyes were red, filled with tears of pure desperation. Diane, he choked out. I can't. The loan sharks, if I don't pay them, they'll kill me. Please. You have millions. Just help me. Just this once. For old time's sake. For the 25 years. I looked at him. I looked at the man I had loved for half my life. And I felt nothing. No hate. No love. Just indifference. You should have thought about that before you bet our marriage on a pair of jacks, I said. Robert slumped back in his chair. He looked small. Defeated. Broken. If you are still listening to this story, please help me out by liking the video and commenting the number 1 down below. It lets me know you are amazing, and it tells me that you are with me on this journey. Your support is huge encouragement for me. Comment 1 so I can recognize you, and now, listen to me tell the rest of my story. Robert picked up the pen. His hand shook so violently that the signature was barely legible. He signed away the house. He signed away his claim to my money. He signed his own death warrant. We're done here, Patricia said, snapping the folder shut. We stood up. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out of the conference room, the click-clack of my heels sounding like a victory march. The moment we stepped out of the conference room, the reality of what Robert had done crashed down on him. We walked into the hallway. Kayla was still sitting on the bench, scrolling on her phone. When she saw us, she stood up, smiling, expecting good news. Expecting a check. Then Robert stumbled out behind us. He looked like a man who had just survived a plane crash. Babe? Kayla asked, her smile faltering. Did you get it? Can we book the movers? Robert didn't answer. He just leaned against the wall and slid down until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. Mr. Sterling walked out, stuffing papers into his briefcase. He looked annoyed. He stopped in front of Robert. I'm withdrawing as your counsel, Robert, Sterling said loud enough for everyone to hear. My retainer didn't cover a complex fraud case or a bankruptcy filing. And since you clearly have no way to pay my hourly rate moving forward, you're on your own. Good luck. Sterling walked away without looking back. Kayla looked from Sterling to Robert, then to me. The realization started to dawn on her. Robert, she said, her voice rising in pitch. What's going on? What did he mean, no way to pay? I stopped. I turned to look at her. He means he's broke, Kayla, I said calmly. The money you thought he had? It was mine. And it's gone. He has nothing. No beach house. No millions. Just about 150 grand in gambling debt. Kayla's face went white. She looked down at Robert. Is that true? Tell me she's lying. Robert looked up, tears streaming down his face. Kayla, honey, we can figure it out. We can get an apartment. I can get a loan. A loan? Kayla screeched. People in the hallway were starting to stare. You told me you were rich. You told me you were buying the villa cash. You told me you were leaving her with nothing. I tried. Robert sobbed. It didn't work. She locked it up. Kayla looked at him with pure disgust. It was the look of a parasite realizing the host was dead. You loser, she spat. You lying, pathetic loser. Kayla, please. The baby. Robert reached for her hand. She snatched her hand away. There is no baby, you idiot. I'm not pregnant. I just said that so you'd leave her faster. Robert froze. I froze. Even Patricia looked shocked. What? Robert whispered. I faked the ultrasound, Kayla sneered, adjusting her purse. I bought the photo online for $20. You think I'd have a kid with a broke old man? I was securing the bag. But since the bag is empty, I'm out. She turned on her heel and started walking away. Kayla! Kayla, wait! Robert tried to scramble up, but he tripped over his own feet and fell back down. She didn't look back. She walked straight to the elevator, pressed the button, and vanished from his life as quickly as she had entered it. I looked down at my husband. My ex-husband. He was lying on the dirty courthouse floor, sobbing. He had lost his wife. He had lost his fortune. And now, he had lost the fantasy he destroyed it all for. "Come on, Diane," Patricia said softly, guiding me away. "There's nothing left to see here." We walked out into the sunshine. The air tasted sweet. "Did you know?" I asked Patricia. "About the fake pregnancy?" "I suspected," Patricia said. "It's a common trick." But hearing her admit it? That was poetic justice. I got into my car. I didn't go to the bank. I didn't go to a lawyer's office. I went to a steakhouse. I ordered the most expensive filet mignon on the menu, a glass of red wine, and a slice of chocolate cake. I ate it alone. And it was the best meal I had ever tasted. For 3 days, silence. I moved back into my house, legally now. I hired a cleaning crew to scrub it top to bottom. I wanted every trace of Robert's stress and anger gone. I threw out the broken vase. I repainted the kitchen a bright, sunny yellow. Then, on Friday night, he showed up. It was raining. A miserable, cold drizzle. I heard a scratching at the door, like a stray dog. I checked the security camera I had installed. It was Robert. He looked homeless. He was wearing the same suit from court, now stained and wrinkled. He hadn't shaved. He was shivering. I opened the door, leaving the chain on. "What do you want, Robert?" He looked up at me, water dripping from his nose. "Diane. Please. Let me in. It's freezing." "You don't live here anymore," I said. "I have nowhere to go," he sobbed. "The loan sharks, they took my car. They took my watch. I've been sleeping in a motel, but I ran out of cash. Diane, please. I'm scared." "You should be," I said. "I was brainwashed," he pleaded, pressing his face against the crack in the door. "That girl. Kayla, she manipulated me. She preyed on my midlife crisis. I didn't mean any of it. I love you. You're my wife. 25 years, Diane. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It meant everything to me," I said quietly. "That's why it hurt so much that it meant nothing to you." "It didn't mean nothing. I was sick. Gambling is a sickness. I need help. I need you to help me get better." There it was. The pivot. Now he was the victim. Now he was the one who needed saving. For 25 years, I had been his savior. I had fixed his messes. I had paid his bills. It was my programmed response to open the door and fix him. But then I remembered the coffee shop. Old hag. Pathetic. "I can't help you, Robert," I said. "I'm retired from that job." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying no. I'm saying you are a grown man who made a series of terrible choices, and now you have to live with them. You can't leave me out here," he screamed, his sorrow turning back into rage. "I built this life. I deserve to be inside. You built nothing." I snapped. "I built it. And you tried to sell it for parts. Goodbye, Robert." I started to close the door. "Wait. Wait." He jammed his foot in the door. "My clothes. My things. At least give me my stuff." I looked at him. "Fine. Wait there." I closed the door and locked it. I went to the garage. I had already packed his things. 2 suitcases. Not everything, I donated most of it to Goodwill, but enough. His clothes, his shoes, his toiletries. I dragged the suitcases to the door. I opened it, shoved them out onto the porch, and kicked them down the steps. They landed in a puddle. There, I said. Now you have your stuff. You BTCH, he screamed, grabbing a wet suitcase. You heartless BTCH. Get off my property, Robert, I said, my voice ice cold. Or I call the police. And I think you have a few warrants out for unpaid debts, don't you? Do you want the police to find you? His eyes widened. He grabbed the suitcases and backed away. This isn't over, he yelled from the sidewalk, rain plastering his hair to his skull. You'll regret this. You'll need me. I already regret trusting you, I yelled back. That's the only regret I have. I slammed the door and locked all 3 deadbolts. I leaned against the door, my heart pounding. But I didn't cry. I walked into the living room, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat on the couch. I turned on the TV. I watched a comedy. And for the first time in 6 months, I laughed. I really laughed. He was gone. The tumor was removed. The healing could finally begin. Of course, Robert didn't go quietly into the night. When he couldn't manipulate me, he sent in the flying monkeys. His family. I had been a dutiful daughter-in-law for 25 years. I sent birthday cards. I hosted Thanksgiving. I visited his mother, Barbara, in the nursing home every Sunday. I thought they loved me. I was wrong. They loved the access I gave them to their son's success. On Saturday morning, my phone started ringing. Barbara flashed on the screen. I answered, expecting an apology for her son's behavior. How could you? Barbara shrieked before I could even say hello. Hello, Barbara. Don't you hello me. Robert called me. He's sleeping in a shelter. A shelter, Diane. My son. After everything he did for you. Everything he did for me? I asked, incredulous. Barbara, he cheated on me. He gambled away his own money. He tried to steal my inheritance. Oh, nonsense, she scoffed. Men make mistakes. He was stressed. And that money should have been shared. You're his wife. What's yours is his. You're being selfish and vindictive. Selfish? He has a mistress, Barbara. He thought she was pregnant. Well, maybe if you had given him a child, he wouldn't have looked elsewhere. The line went dead silent. That hit. That was a low blow. The lowest blow. Barbara knew how much I had struggled with infertility. She knew how many nights I had cried over negative pregnancy tests. To weaponize that against me, it was evil. Wow, I whispered. Okay. Now I see where he gets it from. You fix this, Diane, she demanded. You sell that house, you pay off his debts, and you take him back. Or so help me God, the whole family will cut you off. Cut me off? I laughed. It was a dark, dry laugh. Barbara, you rely on me to drive you to your appointments. You rely on me to pay for your extra nursing care because Robert's business couldn't cover it. You think you're cutting me off? No. I'm cutting you off. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. I hung up. Then I did something satisfying. I went to my laptop. I compiled a file. The screenshots of Kayla's posts. The bank statements showing Robert's withdrawals at casinos. The text messages where he called me an old hag. And the recording of his voicemail admitting he owed guys in Vegas. I emailed it to Barbara. And to Robert's sister. And to his brother. Subject line: the truth about Robert. Body: since you seem confused about why I kicked him out, here is the evidence. He is a gambling addict and an adulterer who tried to defraud me. Do not contact me again. If you want to help him, feel free to pay his debts yourselves. I hit send. Then I blocked their numbers. All of them. It was harsh. It was brutal. But it was necessary. I realized that keeping toxic people in your life just because they are family is a recipe for misery. They had chosen their side. They chose the abuser because he was their blood. Fine. They could have him. I called the nursing home billing department. Hi, this is Diane Miller. I'm calling to remove my credit card from Barbara Miller's account. Yes, effective immediately. Please contact her son, Robert Miller, for future payments. Thank you. I hung up the phone and felt lighter than air. I had pruned the dead branches from my tree. Now, I could grow. Time has a funny way of revealing the truth. 6 months passed. My divorce was finalized. Since Robert had no lawyer and didn't show up to the final hearing, he was hiding from process servers for his other debts. I got everything I asked for. The house was mine. My trust was secure. I reverted to my maiden name, Anderson. I started living. I took a painting class. I joined a hiking club. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected while trying to be the perfect wife. One Tuesday evening, I was out with Patricia and a few friends for tacos. We were sitting on the patio, laughing, drinking margaritas. The air was warm. I felt happy. Truly happy. A pizza delivery scooter pulled up to the curb. The driver looked frantic. He was struggling to balance 3 large boxes. He took off his helmet to wipe the sweat from his forehead. It was Robert. The table went silent as Patricia noticed him too. He looked 20 years older. His hair was gray and thinning. He had lost weight, looking gaunt and hollow. His uniform was ill-fitting. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a permanent look of exhaustion and fear. He walked up to the table next to us. "Here's your order," he mumbled, his voice raspy. He turned to leave and his eyes locked with mine. Time stopped. He stood there, holding his helmet, staring at me. I was wearing the red lipstick. I was glowing. I was surrounded by friends. He looked at my car parked nearby, a new convertible I had bought myself as a divorce present. Then he looked down at his scooter. "Diane," he whispered. He looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe apologize? Maybe beg for a slice of pizza? Maybe ask for money? I didn't look away. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just looked at him with absolute neutrality. He was a stranger. A stranger who had delivered a pizza. "You're blocking the walkway," I said simply. He flinched as if I had slapped him. He swallowed hard, nodded, and put his helmet back on. He walked back to his scooter, started the engine, and drove away into the night. "Wow," Patricia said, taking a sip of her margarita. "That was intense." "No," I said, picking up a taco. "That was closure." I later heard from a mutual acquaintance that Robert was living in a basement apartment with 3 other guys. He was working 2 jobs to pay off the sharks, but he would be in debt for the rest of his life. His family had stopped talking to him when the money ran out. He was alone. I didn't feel happy about his suffering. I wasn't sadistic. But I felt a deep sense of justice. The universe had balanced the scales. He had tried to steal my life, and in the process, he had lost his own. I am sitting on the balcony of my house, my beautiful, mortgage-free house, watching the sun set over the garden. Whiskers is asleep on my lap. It's been a year since the explosion. Life is different now. It's quieter, but it's a peaceful quiet, not a lonely one. I finally booked that trip to Italy. I'm leaving next month. I'm going to Florence to take an art history course, the one I gave up 25 years ago. I'm 53, and I'm going to be the oldest student in the class, and I don't care. I can't wait. I've started a small business consulting for women going through difficult divorces. Not legal advice, Patricia handles that, but emotional and logistical support. I help them organize their finances, secure their passwords, and find their courage. I call it the Red Lipstick Club. Every time I see a woman come in, scared, feeling old and useless because her husband traded her in for a newer model, I see myself. And I tell them my story. I tell them about the vase. I tell them about the fake ultrasound. I tell them about the pizza delivery guy. I tell them, you are not a victim. You are a survivor in training. Looking back, I realize that Robert didn't break me. He woke me up. I was sleepwalking through my life, playing a supporting role in his movie. Now, I'm the director. I learned that trust is precious, but financial independence is essential. Ladies, if you are listening to this, love your husband. Trust your partner. But keep a separate bank account. Keep your name on the deed. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you are past your prime. My prime is just starting. The sun has dipped below the horizon now. The sky is a brilliant streak of purple and gold. It reminds me of the bruises I used to feel on my soul, and how they have turned into something beautiful. I finish my tea. I pet the cat. I am alone, but I am not lonely. I am free. And as for Robert? I don't think about him much anymore. He is just a character in a chapter one have finished reading. I have turned the page. And the rest of the book? It's entirely up to me to write. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've made it this far, you are incredible. Please remember to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share this with a friend who might need to hear it. And never forget, you are stronger than you think. Goodbye for now. Diane's journey reminds us that sometimes life's most painful betrayals become our most powerful catalysts for transformation. What appears as an ending, a marriage dissolving after 25 years, was actually the beginning of her authentic life. Her story isn't merely about revenge or justice, it's about reclaiming one's worth and discovering that strength often emerges from our deepest wounds. In a world where women are often conditioned to sacrifice their dreams for others, Diane's awakening serves as a powerful reminder that it's never too late to rewrite your story. She transformed from a supporting character in someone else's narrative to the protagonist of her own life. Her experience teaches us the delicate balance between trust and self-protection, between loving fully and maintaining healthy boundaries. Most importantly, she demonstrates that our value doesn't diminish with age. Sometimes, like fine wine, we only become more potent and purposeful with time. The Red Lipstick Club represents more than just a business venture, it symbolizes the community of support that emerges when we share our stories authentically. Have you ever experienced a moment when what seemed like your greatest defeat actually opened the door to your greatest victory? If this reflection resonated with you or reminded you of your own journey of resilience, please comment good below. Your story matters too, and perhaps by sharing it, you'll help someone else find their strength to turn the page and begin their next chapter.